What's your opinion on David Miscavige, the current head of Scientology?
It's interesting that you remind me of that, because just during the week, I finally got a friend of mine who was working with me in the organization in England, who was declared a suppressive person back in 2000, the year 2000. A really good friend of mine, very clever guy, Rod, a very clever guy, who, funnily enough, he was never actually a Scientologist, but he kind of ended up in the Sea organization, but not a victim type at all. Very, very unusual. But he did a lot of driving, a lot of looking after David Miscavige when David Miscavige was in England. Now, I've met David Miscavige a few times. Of course, I'll only have seen the public relations David Miscavige, except for that one experience where I mentioned the book, and he stands on the middle of the road in front of my truck, staring up at me with this complete malevolent, evil stare. You know, what the heck's that about? I don't know. But Rod gives an awful lot of insight into him. First of all, you have to understand that Miscavige has known nothing else but Scientology since he was a child. He's known nothing else. He doesn't know the world outside Scientology. The only real experience that he's been having of the world outside Scientology is recently thanks to Tom Cruise. David Miscavige has lived Scientology morning, noon and night since he was probably 9 years old. And he's been in the Sea organization since he was 12. And he was trained directly by Hubbard. I think Hubbard pointed him as his successor. So Miscavige's life is very shallow. He's an extremely violent, aggressive man. He screams and he shouts and he throws chairs at people and he jumps up on tables and he beats people. He's a very small man. He's about 5 foot tall. He's he's a slightly tall dwarf. He wears big lifts in his shoes. He's a very sharp guy. I don't know if he must be a very intelligent man, but it's all wrapped up in Scientology. He doesn't have intelligence outside of Scientology. Rod gave an interesting insight. All the international executives, he was driving a bunch of them in a car. Rod said, look, every year they come to St. Helens, do this huge big IS event, right? After the event, these execs would, take a bit of chill out time, right? People like Rod would be driving, and he had him in the car, in people carrying him. There was this humpback bridge, right? And Miscavige in the front and the other senior execs in the back, and Miscavige says, Rod, drive over the bump. He's like a kid, right? Now, Miscavige at that stage would have been would have been in his late 30s, right? Come on, drive over the bump. Like fucking kids, Rod was saying, right? And so he does it, goes bam, slams the car on the road. Yeah, they're like fucking kids, you know what I mean? Which, you could say, well, that's all very fun, but what kind of life does this guy live that if that's exciting for him? They were all really excited by this, and he said they were like kids who'd be looking out, when he'd drive them to London, and they'd be like, wow. It was like they were being let out. So Hubbard obviously lived the complete Sea Org life like I was living. Miscavige lived a complete Sea Org life like I was living all the time. Now, since he's been working with Cruise, he's completely changed. And what he's done now, he fired all the execs, like my marketing area that I was working in, he put all those people in the RPF, all the senior execs who used to work with, like the Mark Yeagers and Heber Jensen's, they're all in this horrible little compound. They've all been SP declared, but they've been kept in prison in this base in Hemet. The reason being because they know all the inside stories, so they're not being let out. So they're declared, and they have to get themselves undeclared while slaving away in this little thing. Anyway, that's another story. But Miscavige decided that Cruise was his answer to everything, and Cruise obviously latched on to Miscavige, as you can see in those videos on YouTube. Now it's all gone horribly wrong, so I don't know what the outcome of that's going to be, but Miscavige wasn't very, very unusual. at the New Year's event that Scientology does every year. There was no Miscavige, there was Tommy Davis. So I don't know, there's something funny going on there. Anyway, whatever. But that's Miscavige. He's a very damaged man. He's a very institutionalized man. He's a very dangerous man. He has no moral compass. The only moral compass he's got is Scientology. And Scientology has only got ethics. Will only have ethical considerations to inside of Scientology, not to outside, because you're all wogs. Anybody's watching this is a wog. I'm a degraded being and an SP. We can be destroyed. Well, absolutely, it's within Scientology's worldview. There's nothing particularly wrong with destroying somebody like me, or destroying a homosexual, or wogs are just there to be used to be cleared. And once they're clear, they're okay, but they have to be gone and cleared. That's all I can say about Miscavige. I mean, there's a huge amount of power vested in that man, and he's an unbalanced man. That's a dangerous combination.
If there's anybody in or considering the Church of Scientology that's actually watching this, what would you have to say to them?
In essence, what I try to say is, I mean, look, I've written the book, The Complex, right, and that book is available. I'm making it as available as possible, and I'm going to continue to work with the publishers to make it very, very, very available indeed, because it's the only book really that's available on the subject, as a critique of the subject, really, from an insider's perspective. But I was talking to, this young lady I was talking to on the radio show, the Donegal radio program, Frank something or other, his daughter, Sabrina is her name. And like to her, I would say, it's Scientology. It looks like it's giving you a nice, simple answer to whatever you're dealing with, whatever made you want to do. Well, you had to be looking for something. You had to be expressing some kind of emptiness or something. The biggest mistake you're making right now is going for Scientology. Scientology will not answer your problems at all. It will end up costing you. It'll end up causing you grief. It'll end up, you will not have a very complete life if you remain in Scientology. Definitely not. The best thing to do is just inform yourself as much as possible. There's a huge amount of information on the internet. There's a huge amount of information available, a lot of discussion forums. Do not buy into it. Go to university, study psychology, study philosophy, study English and history. You'll learn so much more about problems and whatever you're dealing with in life by doing that than you will in just ruining your life by doing Scientology. Same reason I'd say don't do drugs, don't do Scientology.